people, their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more, no more complaining. People, their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more.
Today I want to talk about WWGD, and I want you to be open to this. You see the picture of Jason Alexander there next to me. I've seen Jason Alexander in some other shows, and nothing quite like how he played George Costanza on Seinfeld. And David, what's his name, that wrote Seinfeld, who also did Curb Your Enthusiasm. It'll come to me. But anyway, he was the main writer, and he and Jerry Seinfeld created the TV show Seinfeld. David, it's going to come to me. Anyway, somebody else let me know. Anyway, this character of George Costanza I talked about before, because in looking at borderline personality disorder, then I discovered that George Costanza is sort of the poster child for borderline personality disorder. So if you're near your computer, I want you to type in, what are some characteristics that we think of when we think of George Costanza? What is he like? Describe him in a word or two. The character of George Costanza on Seinfeld. I'd love to see your comments. So comment if you would. Tell us about the character of George Costanza on Seinfeld. Describe him in one word, and we're going to address this. And as you're doing that, I want to talk to you about a study that was done. They took a group of actors, and these were off-Broadway actors, and they gave them a script and asked them to actually step on stage and act out the script. Now, the interesting thing about this script was that in some cases, some of the people played really, really happy people in the script, and some people played angry, neurotic, think George Costanza, etc., etc., etc. And at the end of the experiment, they had these people do like a one-act play, but they were supposed to give it their all. And the character, some of the characters were angry like George Costanza, like this. Now, the interesting thing is, at the end of this, they switched it. And first of all, they drew blood on all the characters as soon as they were done. This was an experiment to see how acting in a certain way reflects on your body. We've heard this concept of fake it till you make it. Well, they truly tested it, because these people were faking it. They gave them a script, and they had some of the people be nice and happy, and some of the people be angry, anxious, and neurotic, and they took blood samples. Then they switched them, and they gave them a new script. And this time, the people who were angry and anxious and neurotic were now supposed to play happy, calm, comfortable people. And the people who had played the calm, comfortable people were now playing the angry and the anxious role. So let me take a look back. Here's the thing that they discovered. They then took blood samples from a person. Think about this. Take this in. This could change your day right here. All right, what I'm about to tell you. From a person simply reading from a script and acting like they are angry and anxious, the body knew absolutely no difference, and their bloodstream was filled with cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol can give you high blood pressure, heart attack, make you fat, give you a stroke. Cortisol is bad for you. It is the stress hormone. So what I'm saying is that the body and the mind don't know the difference, whether you are play acting as a character or whether you are dead serious. Your body is going to react. Unfortunately, many of us walk out with the wrong script. We walk out with the angry, neurotic script, as opposed to those of us who or other people who took on the script of the happy person. I was just looking at David's comment. Great, David, you're getting your second shot. Should have your bracelet soon. Whiny. All right, here's some descriptions of George Costanza that you all have supplied. Pamela Jane O'Connor, whiny. Linda, funny, that's for sure. Awkward, totally awkward. Irritable. Ed, that's probably nailed it right there. Anxious, very good, says Denise Bazart. He is like an extreme form of Felix Unger. Okay. I would see similarities there. Yeah, totally get it, David. I got the bracelet. Mary got her bracelet. That's good. Good to know. Behavior changes your body chemistry. Yes, it does. So, first of all, before I get into this, really, I want you to think about poor um, Jason Alexander, who had to play George Costanza, because he literally had to do these takes over and over and over again. I'm looking up Curb Your Enthusiasm because this is bothering me now. David Gilbert, is that right? Enthusiasm. And I'm totally misspelling it because I'm doing this live here. Let's see what we can get quickly, though. Space can't be provided. There we go. Stream. All right. I see the guys, Larry David. I knew the name was David. All right, Larry David. So Larry David wrote a lot of these episodes, and he wrote the character of George Costanza. And of course, Larry David also has his own show called Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I could not watch because I tried watching it, and I watched it for a couple of seasons. But what I realized was it's awkward, it's uncomfortable humor. I had the same trouble with Veep. I couldn't watch Veep for the same reason. But with George Costanza, he is just always primed and everything is out to get him. Here's some words I would use to describe George Costanza: paranoid, insecure, anxious, as some of you said, irritable, like you said, frustrated, discontent. No matter what George gets, George is discontent. If he gets a beautiful woman to fall in love with him, he can't believe his good luck, and he's sure he's going to screw it up, and he talks about that constantly. Or else he can't get anyone to date him or whatever, no matter what it is. I remember there was one of my favorite episodes was George decided that he could improve sex by combining other things that he loved, like eating, because eating was one of his favorite things. And so it shows the sheet with him and this woman in the bed, and you don't see anything, but the sheet is moving around and they're laughing. And then George's hairy little arm comes out and grabs a sandwich, and he takes a bite and puts it back. So he wasn't satisfied with sex. He had to also add a sandwich. And then he ended up adding television. And that ended up losing the girl at that point. So George is never satisfied. He's irritable. He's anxious. He's duplicitous. He would rather lie than tell the truth and then cover the lies with the lies with the lies. He lives in this fearful state. And the other day, I think I shared with you that after my own observation, that George Costanza is the perfect loud. Yes, he's also loud, says Ed. Very good. Well, he's very reactionary. His emotions are already high and buzzing. Think about that. That's what a borderline personality has. Their emotions are already higher than everybody else's. They're already anxious. And when they get triggered, their trigger gets higher. So in other words, a normal person, let's say if Jerry is normal, hypothetically, then Jerry's level of daily anxiety is somewhere around here. And when something happens, it goes up a little bit and then it comes down, right? Whereas George's anxiety is already up here. I'm gonna have to do this again, up here. And when something happens, boom, he goes here, and he also stays there for a very, very long time. I was thinking about this idea of WWJD. Remember those bracelets? They're still around. What would Jesus do? Which are great ideas. It's an awesome idea because I think that what Jesus would do is something that is loving and something that is accepting rather than something that is angry and something that is reactive. So I want to ask you today to think of WWJD, but instead of it being what would George do, think what wouldn't George do? When you get into a circumstance or a situation, your ego is your inner George Costanza. I think that's one of the better ways to think about it. It's that angry, fearful side of you that's going to overreact in an attempt to try and protect you and try and take care of you. And so what it does is it overreacts. So as you go through the day, what if you were to ask yourself as you begin to think about it, to visualize this idea of George Costanza inside of you and how you would react differently? I started off talking about how they've discovered that actors who play angry, insecure people, their bodies don't know the difference, and so it responds that way. And I've often thought about poor Jason Alexander, who had to do this for 10 years. Not to say he didn't enjoy it, not to say that he didn't somewhat disassociate from it, but I'm here to tell you that if they would have taken his blood samples during the filming of the show when he was so upset, his body would not have known the difference. And so it's really, really a choice in many ways. And that's what we don't realize. I was talking with someone the other day, and they were talking about there's still this idea, and we've talked about it a lot, about reactivity, that when something happens, people react, myself included. I've struggled with that, especially in the past. And you react instead of just taking it in and then acting over time, giving yourself a chance to take it in, to process, to feel, to understand. And otherwise, you end up getting, I lost my thought there. I was reading on something that Ed wrote. Willow says, I couldn't watch TV for years. The images were so full of anger and neurosis, so I didn't. I walk in nature. Very cool. Very, very good. That is absolutely a great idea. Heather says, kindness matters and listeners matter. And Heather says, great example. Thank you very much. Yes, someone described George as funny, and I would absolutely agree that George is funny, but we're not laughing with him. We are laughing at him. We are laughing at his neuroses. I remember, what was the one? Oh, there was because like I said, I just completely finished watching all the Seinfeld episodes again. As more of a character study, I enjoyed it too. But there was an episode where George decided to do the opposite of everything that he had done in the past. Do you remember that one? Everything was going wrong. Nothing was working for him with women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he was always trying to make himself appear more than he was. And he decided that he was just going to do the exact opposite of everything that he had ever done. So, for example, he always ordered a tuna on rye. I think that's what he said at Monk's, the coffee shop where they always meet. A tuna on rye. And that day he sat down and he said, no, I want the opposite of tuna on rye. I want the exact opposite. What's the opposite of tuna on rye? I want egg salad on whatever it was, pumpernickel or something like that. And so he orders the opposite sandwich. And then he sees this beautiful woman walk into the coffee shop and he says, yeah, like I've got any chance with her, never going to happen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then he decides, I'm going to do the opposite of what I would normally do. Instead of sitting here feeling sorry for myself, I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk over there and say hello. And instead of telling her lies, which he would normally do to try and convince her and to seduce her, he says, my name is George, I'm bald, I'm broke, and I live with my parents. And she ends up asking him out because he's just straight out honest. George just lives in a world of fear. He lives in a world of fear and paranoia, and it's really kind of sad. It's a perfect example of a person with borderline personality disorder, a person who is neurotic, afraid, sure the world is out to get them, and as a result, the world comes out and gets them. They end up living out time and time and time again the greatest thing they fear. So going forward today, I want you to ask yourself, when you begin to feel anxious and everything, assign that to the George Costanza that's inside of you. And instead, ask yourself, what's the opposite? What wouldn't George do? What would I do? Not what would George do? What would George not do? And then do that. For example, if George is angry and upset with someone, George will maintain that forever and never give. So what do? You give and forgive. There's a famous episode of Seinfeld where George is backing into a space and another guy starts to pull in and they meet and the two of them just stay there for the entire day because neither one of them will give in. That's George Costanza. I won't give an inch. Think about it. Ah! And of course, not surprising, his father, serenity now. And his mother, I'm always yelling. So poor George. I mean, that's the way he was raised. Some of us were raised the same way. The difference is we get to make different choices. We can turn out different if we choose to turn out different. And you can too. So identify that we've all got that inner George Costanza, that thing that's, mine comes out if there's like a group of people moving up towards a line. Like if you're getting ready to get on a plane and you've all got to go through TSA or something like that, my inner George Costanza wants to get ahead of this person or walk a little faster so I can get it. And I'm like, really? You're 2 hours early for your flight and you're concerned that one person might move ahead of you? Come on, George. So even try talking to your inner George Costanza, or give it a female name if you're a woman, and begin to talk to that person inside of you and to discount that fear and that negativity. It's there. Your ego is trying to tell you that it's there to protect you, it's trying to save you, it's trying to make you happy. No, it's trying to control you and it's trying to make you miserable. And you have a choice to make a difference. So today, what wouldn't George do? Do that. What wouldn't George do? Do whatever you think George would not do. By the way, I'll give you another one for George. Impulsive. Impulsive, impulsive, impulsive. Boom, boom. Action, reaction. Never time to take it in, never time to think of his ultimate goals, etc., etc., etc. So since I said etc., 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 it's time for you to click share if you would. That's how we continue to build this positive network, and we get so many of you who click share every single day. I want to thank those of you who did already. Who's going to be the first to share this morning? Willow reminds us that we are self-determined. Mary says thank you. Michelle says it's never too late to make a change. My goodness, Michelle, yes, I'm probably going to be on my deathbed rethinking things. David says, feel like George Costanza when you're in a traffic jam and you're short, available time, and make it on time. Tension. Bingo. That's exactly right. Think about that. But think about the fact, and this is where it will give you compassion for people with borderline personality disorder, David. George Costanza feels that way all the time. Imagine waking up and feeling like you're trapped in a traffic jam, having that same feeling. No wonder you're going to act and react and everything. Ed says that every episode was a study in resentment. I would say that is true. I'll tell you one thing about the TV show Friends. Try and find an episode of Friends that is not based on a lie. Every episode of Friends is based on a lie. I discovered that from watching it. Willow has shared, and so has Ed. Thank you so much. Heather says, I've been wearing my complaint-free bracelet. It's a wonderful reminder. Thank you. May I complain less today? Don't just wear it, Heather. Wearing it's not the idea. Switch it every time you catch yourself complaining. I'm back on day one myself after a conversation I did last night. David shared. Mary shared. Thank you so much. David says, used to feel like that when I was a child. I get it. Shared, and Andrew smiled, says Linda. That's awesome. So remember today that you've got a George Costanza inside yourself, and ask yourself, what wouldn't George do? And let that be the dictator. Do the opposite of what George or Larry David would do. Such little, petty, angry things. Do you remember the one where George was at the car dealership and he tried to get a Twix bar to come and it got lodged, and then this other guy came along, put his money in, and both candy bars fell, and George just lost his mind. That's the thing. The least little thing is a major slight to George. I aspire to be where the major things are the minor things. Don't you? Pamela Jane says opposite day. I love that idea. Yes, today is opposite day. Do the opposite of what George would do. There was actually a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon one time where Calvin and Hobbes were enjoying opposite day. They were each doing the opposite of what it is they think they should do. How about have some compassion for yourself and others? Look beyond your own limitations of your ego. There you go. So present the best of yourself to the world is the idea. And the thing to remind yourself is that that scared, frightened part of you inside of you, it's not the real you. The real you is the faithful, happy, conscious side. So bring that forward out today by having it opposite day. What wouldn't George do? Make that your plan today. Enjoy today, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating complain